I want to acknowledge the traditional owners of this country, the Turrbal people, and also those traditional owners in Lockhart River. In 2002, I found myself on a very small 10-seater plane flying to the remote community of Lockhart River in Cape York. I was Executive Director, Leadership and Culture in my State Department of Education. I was part of a small government envoy determined to make a contribution to closing the gap of significant disadvantage in Aboriginal communities and to get better results from the government investment. We'd done our initial assessment in our offices in the capital, and we were flying in to meet with community leaders. We would then fly out again, develop plans, get the right people, implement them. This is the typical white Australian way of helping remote Indigenous communities. In a fly-in, fly-out solution model, it's usually outside experts who decide what needs to be addressed and how it's going to be addressed and when it's going to be implemented, and they fly in and out of the community. I thought I was well prepared, but when we landed in the community, I was absolutely shocked by the startling poverty and disadvantage that I witnessed. I could not believe that this was Australia, my country, in the 21st century. How could this have been allowed to happen? Community leaders weren't particularly interested in talking with us. We could have seen this as rude or just ungrateful, but clearly we didn't have the local knowledge or cultural competence to do what was needed. It was very tough going. We were out of our comfort zone, but a few things became strikingly clear. The idea that we could sit in our air-conditioned city offices and develop plans to address the issues in a remote Indigenous community were crazy. The idea that local leaders didn't know or care about the challenges facing their community was arrogant. The idea that they would trust us when we walk in and say we're from the government, when in their living memory they have been disenfranchised, dislocated, forced into servitude. They've had their children stolen and their wages stolen. They've been punished for practicing their own culture and speaking their own language. They are the inhabitants, this is their country for 50,000 years, and yet today they have no right to own land in their own community. The government has been the perpetrator or complicit in many of these initiatives. And so for us to walk in and say, we're from the government, trust us, is absolutely ludicrous. And then there's the idea that the challenges in remote Indigenous communities can be addressed without long-term, sincere, authentic engagement and working closely with the local community. Is simply wrong. So what is the result of this fly-in, fly-out solution model? The community ends up more disempowered. It's not their ideas, their issues, or their solutions. Often the wrong projects are implemented and they fail because they're not community-led. Often this failure is then blamed on the communities and used as an excuse not to reinvest. The end result of this is that the issues and the challenges of remote Indigenous communities are put in the too hard basket. I was initially a fly-in, fly-out worker. After developing relationships with community leaders, they asked me to go and help them do some planning and to stay in the community, live there for a couple of months. I agreed. I ended up staying and living there for 5.5 years that time. I was inspired by the people of Lockhart River because despite generations of adversity and their current unbelievable hardship, I could see determination, strength and pride. Determination to secure a better future for their coming generations. strength to carry on despite so many young deaths and a suicide rate double the national average, and pride in themselves and their culture. I was determined to become part of the community, to build on their strengths and to work with them on their issues. And by that I mean the issues that they see as important and urgent. This is not a fly-in, fly-out way of working, building an authentic relationship. It doesn't happen in a couple of trips or a couple of hours or days. It takes months or years. I quit my job. I established the Puuya Foundation. Puuya means heart or life force in the local Kukiao language. In the foundation, we developed a totally new way of working with the community to get results called the Puuya approach, turning many things on their head to the normal way of working with Aboriginal communities. As a charity, we work alongside the community, empowering and working with everyday leaders to help them shape and determine and create their own bright future. 2/3 of our board members are local community leaders. Our most recent endeavour, the establishment of the Kunchikakana Families Together Centre, is a great example of our Puuya approach in action. At a community strategic planning discussion, community leaders identified that the early years education was a mess and that this was critical for the future of their children and community. They asked the Puuya Foundation to work with them to develop a new solution. So together, we looked at what they wanted and, equally importantly, what they didn't want. What they wanted was parents and carers involved in their children's education from birth, learning together, giving children the best start to life. They did not want a drop-off childcare centre. They wanted a curriculum that focused on culture, independence, and life skills. They wanted local jobs and training, not fly-in, fly-out workers. It was a challenge, a really big challenge to make it happen. Getting funding for something new, innovative, and out of the box is never easy. And then there's constructing a building in a remote community where not even local traditional owners can own land. Getting building materials to site added 30% cost, and the challenge associated with our roads being cut for up to 6 months of the year with monsoonal rains. It was a massive challenge, but we did it. And we did it with the help of many people who helped us, could see the Puuya approach working and joined in and shared our vision. Our Kunchikakana Centre was opened in June 2016. Our manager is an amazing local woman and young community leader. Our local men played a vital role in working with elders to seek permission to visit sacred sites, to gather natural materials to create our beautiful dancing circle and playground. The day of the opening was a huge whole of community celebration, just full of joy, and a great tangible demonstration of the success of the approach in action.
Since the centre has been built, my son's been knowing a lot of things, what's right, what's wrong. It's not as well learning care for the child itself, it's also for the parent.
For us parents, I think it's a good way that we can talk about what we're going through and help each other, be there for each other. I think it's a great place because we come together.
So when I look back at our go-to beliefs about addressing the issues in remote Indigenous communities, I know that those go-to beliefs are wrong. Fly-in, fly-out solutions simply do not work. The good news is there is a solution. Building authentic relationships, trusting in the knowledge and wisdom of the local community, and empowering them as everyday leaders to shape and determine their own bright future. The challenge for us is whether we can make that change. Thank you.